there's a resurgence of the, oh my God, the economy's slowing down narrative, which will be helpful. Like I said yesterday, I don't think Bitcoin takes out the old high, the 73,000 high, unless we get the Fed in action or we get some big regulatory breakthrough.
Yeah.
And those are both probably low delta. So that's why I think we're a bit of a range.
Yeah.
I said 65, 75. It's a pretty big range. I'm sorry, 55, 75.
It's a big range.
It's probably closer to 57, 73. Like we've probably put the low end, the high end right now until the next move. And I do believe the next move is up because I do think we're going to get closer to the election. Powell's going to want to cut rates.
Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
An infinite amount of cash.
I'm your host, Alex Thorn.
The U.S. banking system is sound and resilient.
Bitcoin made a new all-time high.
If you're not long, you're short.
Satoshi's going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet. All Bitcoin's going to be erased.
Bitcoin's the best crypto asset.
Bitcoin is going to zero.
Welcome to Galaxy Brains. I'm your host, Alex Thorn, head of firm-wide research at Galaxy. Bitcoin, not zero. In fact, up a bit from last week. We're feeling good. And some inflation numbers came in a little weaker than expected, so that was positive, and markets reacting positively today. As you might have heard at the front of the episode, we have Mike Novogratz, CEO, founder of Galaxy. He is our guest. We're going to get into it with him. BIMNet is off this week. And before we get to all of that, I need to remind you to please refer to the link to the disclaimer in the podcast notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Woo, I'm getting fast. I'm keeping it fast. It feels like a big day because we got Mike on, and that's always a fun time. Phineas, I mean, we just cut that interview. What do you think? I mean, you work with Mike a lot.
It's packed.
Yeah.
It's a classic packed.
It's going to be great.
45, whatever we did, 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really, really packed with great
We
stuff.
talked about Galaxy. Galaxy reported Q1 earnings yesterday, and Mike talked a little bit about that. And we talked about crypto, obviously, and Bitcoin and adoption and macro. I asked him a question. I asked him what the heck is going on with Japan, because I was like, I'm not a macro guy. We talked about politics. It's a good one.
It's a great one. Mike lived in Japan, which I sort of didn't know until this interview.
Yeah.
We want to do a couple quick news items before we jump into the interview.
You're always asking me to illuminate.
Yeah, exactly. Number one, over 20% of voters in swing states consider crypto a key issue in U.S.
This
elections.
is a big deal. This was a survey put out by DCG and the Blockchain Association, a Harris poll. They looked at voters in Ohio, Michigan, Arizona. I forget the other 5 swing states. And polled them on crypto sentiment and stuff. And something like, 20% of voters, likely voters, said crypto was a very important issue. And frankly, the demographics of those voters were pretty split between Republicans and Democrats. So I've been saying that this is objectively not a partisan issue. It's just this one wing of the Democratic Party has been making it a partisan issue. But in reality, Americans of all, shapes and stripes are interested in it. Not all Americans, but those who are a diverse group of people. Big thing, because I think the other one you were going to ask me about is Trump campaign is going to accept crypto. And in addition, last week, Trump, or earlier this week, Trump said, this was last week, Trump was talking about crypto and said, if you like crypto, then you should vote Trump. And this is the same day that the White House threatened to veto this SAB 121 bill that's going through now the Senate. So crypto's becoming a partisan issue that's relevant in presidential politics, which is really kind of surprising and interesting.
Yeah, it seems to be the undeniable sea change, where it's just going to continue to become undeniable.
Yeah, I mean, it's relevant.
Yeah.
It's already relevant. So I don't know. Let's get into it with Mike. You guys can all hear, and we'll get right into the show. Let's go now to our guest, Mike Novogratz, CEO, chairman, founder of Galaxy Digital. Mike, thanks for coming back to Galaxy Brains.
Galaxy Brains. I like the title.
Yeah, it's been we last talked to you in December, so it's been a quarter. Actually, gosh, it's May. It's been 5 months.
Yeah.
A lot has changed. The ETFs did get approved. We thought they might.
Prophetic.
I mean, yeah, truly. And I also wanted to have you on, too, because this week was Galaxy's Q1 earnings call, and which, of course, you're on every. So I want to talk to you about the crypto markets, the macro markets, and then Galaxy a little bit. But I don't know. Where do you want to start? What's right on your mind today?
Listen, Galaxy had a great first quarter, right? We did $400 million of earnings. That's coming on the back of a great fourth quarter. And it was interesting because all our businesses did well. Mining had its best quarter ever. We continue to mine at a lower price than almost anyone in the space. Our asset management had record revenue, and our trading business, mostly derivatives and lending, had great businesses, had great years. We did some marquee transactions. We did a big Solana trade, and it's made us the second largest validator on the Solana network, which really helps jumpstart our staking as a service business. And so it just feels like everything's kicking for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
And so that's great. What I said on the earnings call, and I think is really important, and it's not just for our company, but for all companies in this space, something really significant happened in the last 6 to 9 months. And that is, with the adoption of the ETF, there's been a psychic shift, a psychological shift amongst institutional investors in that this is now an industry. And well, we all thought it was an industry for a long period of time.
Yeah.
You know, people are lending us money unsecured. We've got phones ringing off the hook with potential partnerships. Every big institution is figuring out what tokenization is going to mean to them. And so I have more confidence today than any time in the last 10 years of being in crypto that in 12 months and in 24 months, more institutions will be engaged in this space and the space will be bigger. That doesn't mean the price goes up every month or every quarter. Right? We started this quarter at 73,000. Today we're at 65,000 6 weeks in. And for all of our businesses, for Galaxy's business and for everyone else's business in this space, unlike most businesses outside of crypto, the activity level, the revenue, the excitement is very correlated to one asset, right? Bitcoin goes up, other crypto goes up, your staking revenue goes up, your asset management revenue goes up, your trading volumes pick up. And so we are still going to be correlated to the volatility and direction of the corn. And so we pray every night that Bitcoin goes higher.
Yeah, we do. And I guess in that way, it still feels like a commodity industry in that sense, right? I mean, oil companies and downstream oil derivatives, consumer products are all based on oil price, right?
It's so interesting that there is a commodity company aspect to what we do. And that's because we're all based in dollars, right? In a future world, a long time away, if God forbid the dollar became toilet paper and things were based in Bitcoin. And like I know a bunch of really true Bitcoiners, they only think in Bitcoin terms. Mm-hmm. It's not how many dollars of Bitcoin you have, it's how many coins you have, right? That's not our company. It's not going to be the world for a long period of time. And so in a dollar-based world, we are a commodity company in that respect. It's a great analogy.
Yeah. I wanted to ask too about the cyclicality question. A lot of people have been, well, you get the halving, is it bullish, bearish, is it whatever the halving, but people were really kind of getting nervous with Bitcoin making a new all-time high before the halving, which has never happened before, right? But other things too, like we've seen Ethereum very underperform really in this market, and it used to be Bitcoin, ETH, and altcoins, then right?
Is
that a thing?
This whole space is a narrative space. And what I mean by that, it's a storytelling space. Well, I'm good at this space. I'm a good storyteller. We need good engineers. We need good traders. We need good but storytelling is a big part of it. And it's going to be a big part of it until the protocols that are built on top of the blockchains are being used in everyday life. And there's a revenue that comes out of them, not just a story. Right now, it's the story of what they might do. Yeah. Right. And you need use cases and proof of concepts to help those stories go along. But we're in a narrative business, so we had great narratives for the last 9 months. The ETF is coming. Larry Fink is endorsing this. Not just Larry Fink, but 10 other giant TradeFi companies getting into the ETF space. The halving was coming, and oh, by the way, Chairman Powell's going to cut 8 times. Yeah. We got 2 of the 3. Right. Chairman Powell's probably not going to cut for a while. Right. In the last few days, you've seen fixed income rally, cryptos take off again. We were at 57, then 61, and now we're at 65. Gold making record highs, silver making record highs, copper making record highs. And so there's or at least local highs, gold record highs.
Silver doing well. I mean, a lot of the commodities.
So there's a resurgence of the, oh my God, the economy's slowing down narrative, which will be helpful. Like I said yesterday, I don't think Bitcoin takes out the old high, the 73,000 high, unless we get the Fed in action or we get some big regulatory breakthrough.
Yeah.
And those are both probably low deltas. So that's why I think we're a bit of a range.
Yeah.
I said 65, 75. It's a pretty big range. I'm sorry, 55, 75.
It's a pretty big
It's
range.
probably closer to 57, 73. Like we've probably put the
Yeah.
low end, the high end
Yeah.
right now until the next move. And I do believe the next move is up because I do think we're going to get closer to the election and Powell's going to want to cut rates.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense, and yeah, people have been getting very concerned. I want to ask you this too about the broader American debt and fiscal and I mean, I wouldn't say so much monetary policy. I mean, except it does feel like the market and regular people have started to learn that the Fed is printing money out of thin air. Like that.
So
that story is propagated. But how worried are you long term
I
about?
am, as an American and as
Yeah.
a patriot, petrified. Matter of fact, I met 2 days ago with 2 U.S. senators, one Republican in the office, one Republican, one Democrat. I spent an hour on the phone with a congressman yesterday. I'm having another meeting with a senator. And, I have a bunch of different interests.
Yeah.
Right now, I talk about 2 things, crypto regulation and the goddamn debt. And they're at odds with each other. If we had an administration, Biden or Trump, that addressed this 26% of GDP federal budget, which should be 20%, it would not be good for Bitcoin. And so having really crappy policymakers and profligate spenders and populists in Washington, great for my net worth.
Yeah, because it draws a comparison to Bitcoin,
Well,
right?
that's just the story of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going up for the same reason gold is going up.
Yeah.
It's gone up faster because we're a newer technology, we're a newer commodity,
Right.
and therefore the adoption cycle is happening faster.
What do you make of this? The gold ETFs have had like net outflows this year, but gold spot has been rising.
It's interesting. We were just talking about this at lunch. There's been $200 billion of individual buying of gold. I mean, Costco sells $200 million.
It's pretty amazing, Costco. Yeah.
We have one spy of a podcast, Business Untitled, and we had one guy call us up. He loved our podcast. He wanted to sponsor us. JM Bullion.
Yep, I've
They're the
seen those
largest.
ads. Yeah.
They're the largest, seller of gold coins, and they gave us gold coins to give our guests.
It's amazing.
Because they like I'm bullish gold. They like
Right.
they like our shtick. I love JM Bullion for
Shout
doing
out.
it because it's nice to have a sponsor.
Yeah.
At one point, Galaxy Brains.
We should get a sponsor.
I guess Galaxy's the sponsor.
We have it primarily, yes. Literally, yes. But so do you think that just as if the ETFs are seeing outflows, is it more coming from either physical or then maybe foreign central banks and stuff? They don't buy the ETFs.
So foreign central banks are buying gold
Yeah.
at record pace. Right?
Yeah.
China, they're all buying gold. Partly because when the U.S. kicked Russia in the knees after the war started
Right.
with Ukraine, I think people said, "Wait a minute, the U.S. can actually take our dollars."
Or they seize the reserves
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
And so
Having gold in a vault somewhere seems like a decent.
I'm gonna look into this ETF. We were just talking about this.
Yeah,
at
it's an
lunch.
interesting question.
It is interesting.
Yeah, because part of me was thinking, when you think of younger people wanting let's say a hedge on the dollar or the whatever it is,
Bitcoin.
probably picking Bitcoin and not gold. And also, if you look at it as a growth story and not a hedge, then you also would pick Bitcoin and not gold. But of course, foreign central banks, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. The dollar has not been, it's stronger than all the other currencies. There's no doubt about that. They all look pretty
well,
bad.
and it's starting to weaken a little bit right now.
Yeah.
Listen, what's happening is really fascinating in that, so every country, let's just talk about the U.S., you have a central bank, ideally an independent central banker,
Yeah.
so that's Jay Powell, and you have a treasury, which is a arm of the executive branch,
Yeah.
right? And plays in unison with the Congress that set budgets and spend money, right? Congress has to spend the money. Janet Yellen is going to go down as the worst Treasury Secretary of my lifetime, which shocks me because she was a civil servant. She's a nice lady. She was a decent central bank, but she's become a political actor and saying nothing about running this giant deficit. All social projects that you might agree with, but with no counterbalance of cut. And so we're just spending more money than we have. And she is manipulating the yield curve with a invisible yield curve control, right? issuing in the front, less in the back. And Powell is working in unison with her.
Yeah.
So there's this unholy alliance, which is creating a false sense of stability in the fixed income market, or a manufactured sense of stability in the fixed income market. But that release valve, you see it in gold, silver perfectly, and it should help Bitcoin a lot.
Yeah.
And equities. Like, you got to buy equities on every dip because that's where the release valve is.
Yeah.
And so we're going to keep nominal growth growing higher than the inflation rate. And inflation's not going to come back down as fast as people want it to. That helps you inflate away your debt.
Yeah.
But it's just a longer term bull case for stocks, real estate, Bitcoin, silver, gold, all these hard assets.
It's sad because the average American, the poor
Gets crushed.
folks, they don't have any of those things, right? They don't have extra income to buy real estate.
Middle class, working class Americans are getting kicked in the proverbial knees.
Yeah, it's really sad. And also, so do you think, if you had to guess, does America ever get this under control, or are we sort of like in, the Nero times of the Roman Empire? Like, are we in, whether it takes 10 years, 50 years, 200 more years, is it inevitable that we don't?
You don't have that much time. So
Yeah.
we're seeing this debt to GDP spiral, right? If we took CBO's own estimates, which are always wildly conservative,
Yeah.
in 20 years you get to 250% debt to GDP. That doesn't work.
Yeah, that's like Japan level,
And
right?
so the next Secretary of Treasury will have the most important stint as Secretary of Treasury in my lifetime.
Almost, and regardless of which party, too. just the
Regardless of what
time.
party.
Yeah.
Because he has to get this debt deficit problem under control, or we will have a runaway.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically leads to hyperinflation, or you need like what, crippling.
And I
tax.
say all the time, I go to bed and pray Bitcoin doesn't. I don't wake up with Bitcoin at $1 million, because that would mean we've ended civil society.
Yes, slow and steady, not a.
We want slow and steady. We want adoption.
Yeah.
And adoption and more people around the world. And there's always going to be governments. We saw it with Nigeria. We saw it with Turkey. That are unbelievably irresponsible with their monetary policy and their fiscal policy.
Right.
It's populism. I want to
Yeah.
get reelected.
Yeah.
Give everyone a free toothbrush.
I mean, they're going to have to run on. Trump related. Did you see the story a couple weeks ago that I don't know if this is true as report, I think by Politico or somebody, legitimate, but based on sources that Trump is looking to control the Fed more if he becomes it. There's a secret plan to have more influence over what the Fed does should he become president. Did you see that?
That's a real bad sign. I don't know if, the thing about Trump, which is so complicated, forget that, his personal ethics drive 50% of the country insane.
Yeah.
And that creates division. But more complicated than that is he doesn't really stand for a lot. And so he might be saying, we're going to deport 20 million immigrants. He's not going to deport 20 million immigrants. I will bet my life. Literally, you can chop my head off. But will he deport 2 million immigrants? Maybe. But let's assume he does. What does that do? It drives inflation up. Right? I was just talking to one of the world's best investors. He's like, I'm worried if Trump wins, inflation's going to go high because of the immigrant thing. We're going to have no labor. He might start, and someone might whisper in his ear, Mr. Trump, you look very handsome today. And oh, by the way, I think we've paid enough on the immigrants. You already won that, you got the check plus, but we need them to actually do the work.
Yeah.
And he could pivot in a second.
Yeah.
These are not fundamental things he believes in. They are political, expedient things to make him feel good and look good. And so,
what do you think about him on crypto in that spot? Because he recently came out.
He's smart as can be.
Right.
On the day that Joe Biden said, I'll veto SAB 121, I would bet you dime to donuts Joe Biden doesn't know what SAB 121 is.
Yeah.
Most people don't. It's an arcane.
Well, that's what I mean. It's kind of minutia.
It's an arcane accounting rule that the SEC jammed in.
Yeah.
That actually hurts the big banks who want to be in custody.
Right.
More than it hurts the crypto companies. And Biden says he's going to veto it, and Trump, with Ryan Selkis along his side, says, I'm your crypto guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't a great crypto president when he was president.
No, he said he didn't like it.
But now he realizes if we're going to turn this into Democrats hate crypto, then Republicans must like it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we need both sides.
Yeah.
I go to D.C. more than I'd like to, and you call it Richie Torres and Ro Khanna, and even Hakeem Jeffries, who's neutral. We've gotten more neutral to positive. Like we've got advocates on the Democrat side. Jake Auchincloss up in Massachusetts,
Wiley Nickel in North Carolina,
and plenty on the Republican side. I was on the phone with Tom Emmer yesterday. I love Tom Emmer.
Great guy.
It's been Elizabeth Warren and a few people around her that what people don't understand about Washington is if you're a senator, there's bills on everything you've got to have an opinion on.
Yeah, it's true.
And so Senator Warren wields an unbelievable amount of power around our space right now because she's loud. She cares a lot about this.
She chooses to care a lot,
for reasons I don't understand. Right? Crypto should be bipartisan. It is in some ways libertarian, right? Freedom. So it resonates with the libertarian side of Republicans. And it's some ways very progressive. Let's cut out the middleman.
Right. And also like no redlining. It doesn't care who you are. Everyone can have access.
And so,
it's totally very egalitarian in that sense.
We will get through this as a country. We'll get through this if you're a Democrat as a party. But right now, Trump is, he's a great politician, like him or not. And he sees this. And it's almost becoming a purity test. I said this on our earnings call. Like SAB 121, this vote's going to be really big.
Yeah.
If the Democrats vote to repeal it, and just so your audience knows what SAB 121 is, it's an accounting rule that says if you custody Bitcoin or crypto digital assets in your custody, you've got to put them on your balance sheet.
Right, for public companies,
companies.
Basically all banks are.
Right.
But then
so
because
if you're Bank of New York and you want to be a custodian, it blows your balance sheet up. Even though it doesn't really blow
And they have
up.
capital requirements separately for banks, so that's why it makes it infeasible.
And so it basically is a poison pill.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have been there. It's stopping. It's actually worse for the banks than it is for the crypto companies.
Totally. It keeps the banks out.
Yeah. And so it makes no sense.
It's literally ridiculous.
But
it makes no sense.
We'll see in the next week, 3 days, how they vote. Because if it becomes, I don't like crypto, I'm a Democrat, it's almost like saying, I don't like dogs. We are the party of anti-dog.
Yeah.
Screw the dog. You saw what happened to Kristi Noem. Like, American like dogs. There are 65 million Americans that own a dog.
Really?
65 million Americans own a dog, right? We have 340 million Americans.
That's pretty good.
Pretty nice ratio.
I think that's more than own crypto.
My family owns 4, all small ones. Actually, we have one big one. 85 to 90 million Americans now own crypto.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was lower. I Googled it.
I thought it was about 50, but
I
yeah.
double-checked
It doesn't surprise me, especially with
I
ETFs
double-checked before I got on the earnings call.
Let's go.
And so, because the ETF, you've got more and more people owning crypto.
Right.
Now, of that 80 million Americans, or let's say 55, let's make it the same as dogs.
Yeah.
Not all are single-issue voters. Quite frankly, very few are. But if it's 15%,
that's a lot.
You're a single-issue voter.
Oh, yeah.
All the Bitcoin maximalists are single-issue voters. I mean, there are a lot of single-issue crypto voters. That's 10 million voters, mostly young.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing, Democrats? Don't be idiots.
Well, right. At least don't have this like antagonistic. You don't have to be the big supporters or anything, but like to define their policy on it it's an anti.
It's an own goal, and it's not too late to pivot. But we will see. They've got a shot this week. You should talk about it on your next episode.
Yeah. This is a pretty low risk vote for them too, because to your point, this is kind of minutia.
Yeah.
Something like the Fit 21 Act or comprehensive reform. That's a big deal. Like I get that. That could reshape regulatory stuff. But this is just a little tiny weird rule.
This is minutia. And so I'm going to get on the phone with some influential Democrats I know and be like, dudes, don't make this mistake. But
it's just a strange one because it's also like
my influence. My influence in 2 nickels is usually worth a dime.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about crypto markets. Actually, can I ask you more about macro? Because I wanted to ask. BIMNet was explaining to our audience a little bit about this over the last couple of weeks. What is the deal with Japan? I've never really understood. How do they have this high of a debt to GDP ratio? How have they been keeping? Why have they been keeping rates? Like, are they trapped? Can you explain this? Because I know it plays into Yellen's meeting with them. There's a fear they might sell our treasuries to defend the yen.
Japan has a few things.
What's the deal there?
They have a declining population.
Yeah.
Japan is a insular country. When you live in Japan, which I did, you're an anthropologist. They're unbelievably polite and nice to you, but you're never really taken inside. I moved to Hong Kong, and you're a citizen.
Yeah.
Like the next day.
You're ready to hang out.
And so they're not pro-immigrant, right? They're weary of immigrants. They want to preserve their culture, and they have no birth rate. And so you're losing Japanese at a rapid pace. They are the largest savers in the world and the oldest people in the world. Old people don't spend that much money.
Right.
And so there's a huge savings. And so they run this giant deficit, but they have an equal amount of savings. And so it's this weird accounting. We finally, after deflation for since 89, whatever, 30-odd years, 35 years, they've got inflation going. And that's allowing some vibrancy in their economy. The economy is doing fine. And, the yen is going higher because until they raise rates, and why should they raise rates? They only now got inflation after 30 years trying to get inflation. They got just a tiny bit of inflation. They're going to let inflation go for a while.
They want it, right, for their debt? Like, it could be good for them.
It's and actually to get nominal GDP going in their economy.
Yeah.
Why is dollar yen going up every day? Because U.S. rates are 5 and Japanese rates are 0.
Yeah.
Are negative. And so even if they raised them a teeny bit, it's still a huge gap.
Right.
And so currencies over the long haul go on interest rate differential. And we'll see. They intervened at 160. They spent a ton. They have a ton of reserves. And they're hoping the U.S. starts cutting and that takes the pressure off of them.
Yep.
And so they thought Powell thought he would have already cut twice by now. And the market did too. But so we'll see. It's a great thing to watch. The Nikkei was the best performing stock market last year. It's doing fine this year. It only got back to the 1989 high this February.
That's crazy.
89.11, 35 years to regain the high.
That's crazy.
Talk
about
and it did it because there was a cultural and a legal change that said you had to work to get your company trading back towards NAV.
Mm-hmm.
All of these companies traded way below book. Made no sense.
Yeah.
And there was no activism. And so you had corporate activism in Japan for the first time, and a cultural shift of how companies were run.
Yeah.
And so all good for Japan.
Yeah, it's such
It was my worst trade last year in that I talked about it on CNBC and I bought literally like a freaking nickel's worth.
I saw Euro stock. I was just rerunning that chart that we were doing last year a lot of the year-to-date Sharpe ratio for Bitcoin and those other assets. And Bitcoin, by the way, again, still I think third behind NVIDIA and Euro stocks.
Yeah.
They've had a great year, I guess. Probably from a low base? Is that that's the issue? Bitcoin's still third on a risk-adjusted basis and second behind NVIDIA on a total return basis. So just what do you think about that, about the fact that Bitcoin, really, I guess the real question is, and it's a big one. I debate with some of our counterparties this a lot. Some
we
will
got
know.
the same shoes almost.
They're pretty similar. I was saying yours are a little high top, right, or mid top.
Yeah.
Mine are low, but actually, I got these. Our guy Michael Marcantonio found these and was like, they're orange. They got stars for like the galaxy, and I was like, all right, I'm getting them.
I was more thinking Knicks.
That's true. The Knicks are. Yeah, but so why not? So I argue with some of our counterparties about this a fair amount, the ETH BTC ratio, and the people remember there was that classic cycle: Bitcoin, then ETH, and then sort of like alt season, and then I think that idea is silly. But what's happening this time in your mind? Why is that not happening?
The crypto universe was small, and there was less narratives, right? The narrative was the halving, and so that became really important.
Yeah.
Well, when there are other narratives, it's just part of the narrative.
Yeah.
Right? Halving is not as important anymore. Right? What's important is we're in this adoption cycle. Why does crypto continue to have a high Sharpe ratio and is going from lower left to upper right? Because we have a macro environment we just talked about, right? With gold, silver.
Yeah.
So for hard assets, it's a very nice environment to be in. And we're still early in the adoption cycle. And we just pulled the giant lever, which was ETFs and the wealth channel. And so you had the original excitement around it.
Yep.
And now it's going to be the Morgan Stanley, hi.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones, have I talked to you about Bitcoin yet? Right? Bitcoin is always sold, not bought.
Yeah.
So you've got to orange pill somebody.
It's true.
And we just in the last month turned all the Morgan Stanley RIAs into orange
They're
pillars.
about to, yeah.
They're just about and they're going to do it for the next 10 years.
And I'm pretty sure that's the biggest wealth management platform, I think, by AUM.
I picked on
MS, I'm pretty sure.
Morgan Stanley, but
I think they're the biggest, though.
But there's $45 trillion managed by RIAs of baby boomer wealth.
Yeah.
That's a lot of Bud Fox. Have I spoken to you about the opportunities in Bitcoin? I don't even need to talk about Satoshi's white paper or the
Right.
Persian, the Byzantine generals,
Yeah.
double spend. None of that needs to be spoken about ever again. That was Mike Novogratz circa 2014,
Yeah.
trying to act like a computer science guy. Now it's just Bitcoin is digital gold.
So when you talk
Larry
to
Fink.
is it work? And since I asked you this in December, like when I said if you have friends in your group, Mike, your friend group, or even your nearer but broader professional network that were skeptics still, have they changed their mind at all? It's now been, I mean, we're up 270% from January 23.
And it's easier to sell it
Level.
today than it was to sell it when it was.
Even 6 months ago, right?
Yeah. It's becoming an asset now. It's part of your macro dashboard. It's portfolio diversification.
Yeah.
Again, I would change my tune, and it would cost me personal money if I saw any chance of populism going away in this
Yeah.
country.
You said you pray every night for good financial and fiscal stewardship of the
But
economy.
we're in a populist movement, right? It started in 2015 with Brexit and then Trump.
Yep.
And, until there's a new narrative that gets the world and America aligned again, it's going to go back and forth between left and right. But it's populism, and populism spends money.
They both spent. I mean, Trump
And-
spent tons of money.
And, there's a backdrop for our product, our main product, Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the rest of crypto, which has a very different use, it tailwinds off of it. It drags behind Bitcoin, and that money that flows into the system then finds its way into ETH. Listen, ETH will have a huge catch up once the ETF sees some light of day.
Right.
It's not going to see some light of day for a while.
It doesn't seem like it.
No.
We're going to probably find out next week that they were denied, most likely.
Yes, and then
But you know what's crazy? If
you're
they're
gonna have
not
to go to
denied.
What?
What if we didn't write a report on the opportunity for ETH and an ETF like we did for Bitcoin because we don't expect it to be approved? Imagine if they are approved.
If it gets approved, ETH's going to rock it. It's
gonna be-
that'll be fun.
Yeah, because we were kind of saying too that the like if the Bitcoin ETFs had been denied on January 11th, that would have been very bad for Bitcoin price because the consensus was that they'd be approved, right? So it was priced in a little bit, although not all. Similarly, the denial is priced into ETH. No one expects it to be approved. So the risk is really to the upside, theoretically. Although, again, we really don't think it's likely, as you see.
Listen, the market itself, little market color. We trade 73, we trade 57, we bounce to 65, we go back to 60. We're consolidating here. People have gotten short,
Yeah.
and there have been a lot of call selling. So volatility is much lower than it was, much lower, right?
Yeah.
It's down 30 vol handles, and people are short calls. And so if there was a bullish development, the Fed all of a sudden says, oh my God, like we just had CPI numbers today and retail sale, bad retail sales, CPI on its way down, but still not nearly low enough for the Fed to feel good about cutting rates.
Finally not up month over month, right? I mean, that's positive.
But if the next CPI and PC come in lower and jobs are lower, the Fed's going to be cutting.
Yeah.
And if that happens in July, and people are still short these high strikes, then you'll see 73 get taken out and it'll be one of those parabolic moves. You're like, what happened?
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Prices are set on the margin, and it doesn't take that much money. Right. Well, the good thing about the halving is there's less supply every day.
We looked at this too with the ETFs, like on this drawdown. Some people, some analysts, I don't want to call anyone out specifically, but some macro analysts that like to dabble in Bitcoin and crypto were like, "Oh, the ETF buyers are lettuce hens. They're selling, right? Because
There was no selling.
there was almost none at all. It was about 95% of the AUM didn't leave those.
These
funds.
guys are a lot of them are buying it for the first time. Not everyone. Some people are just using it as. I mean, I use ETFs and futures and cash Bitcoin as all the same product.
Yeah.
Right? We move them around depending on basis, depending on financing.
Right.
But most new buyers of ETFs, say they're their first or second time buying Bitcoin, they're not going to buy it and sell it in a week.
No, not really. And a lot of them are people like me that was like, well, I do have this IRA that I can now kind of buy Bitcoin exposure in should I want to.
And I'll tell you, the only other catalyst besides Fed and regulatory, what has been surprising and not surprising because of the SEC is that generally when you get an ETF, a week to 2 weeks later, you get options on the ETF.
Yeah.
And there are no options on the Bitcoin ETF yet.
Yeah.
The SEC is holding that back.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is there a good reason for it? Not that I know of. but maybe the SEC can tell us. The moment that option market comes out, that really unleashes the Robinhood crowd. So what was fascinating is fascinating. So we ETFs, all this hype. You should do a report on this.
Yeah. Okay.
If you look at from day one of the ETFs till today, and you took all those ETFs, what, they're 9?
Yeah. 11 actually. I think.
11.
Yeah.
The 11 ETFs, total volume versus volume on MicroStrategy and Marathon.
Yeah.
MicroStrategy and Marathon kicked its ass.
Yeah.
More volume. And I was like, he was driving me crazy. I was like, why? Because of the options.
Yeah.
All the Robinhooders, all the GameStoppers, all the day traders trade short-term options.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it creates a wacko volatility market, but it creates excitement and volume.
This is what Michael Saylor was saying. I was at his conference now 2 weeks ago, I think, in Las Vegas, the Bitcoin for Corporations conference. And one of the points he was making to the audience was that adding Bitcoin has been such an interesting thing for the volatility of their stock, which is great for their stock. He's like, we want volatility that creates volume, that creates trading and excitement. He was like, that's so much better than like a zombie tech corp, which they were basically, right? You know, a company that's just like limping around.
Michael Saylor is a Chad. He caught this. He did it brilliantly. I'm a little worried, to be honest, for the buyers, because if you just look what the CEO does, he sold stock every day the last 6 months. So when the CEO is selling, I normally get nervous. And he's selling MicroStrategy, which trades at a big premium to Bitcoin, and then he's buying Bitcoin. And so you're like, well, the CEO is doing it. And as a corporation, they issue stock and buy Bitcoin. So he's selling. So you usually want to do what the corporation and the CEO does, which would be, instead of buying MicroStrategy, selling MicroStrategy, buying Bitcoin. Now, he became such a mimic figure that didn't matter. So even though the CEO is selling, people are like, we're buying it anyway because he's that much of an uber Chad. Like that in the long run ends in tears. MicroStrategy will find a ratio versus Bitcoin that will be close to par or maybe even negative because closed-end funds trade negative. It might keep a premium because Michael's really smart and he's going to figure out a way to do something.
Yeah.
But by no means, it doesn't feel right that it will trade at a huge premium.
I mean,
we'll see. It's traded at a big premium. It held its premium. It's going up again.
In some ways, it's similar to the miners. So many of them also sell stock to buy, well, in this case, mining equipment and sites and stuff.
One of my great frustrations, I actually had a lot of hair before this frustration. No one saw that, is that we're still not public in the United States because of the limited amount of crypto opportunities in the U.S., which solely is around because of an SEC that won't approve or hasn't approved many crypto companies. Bullish, ourselves, eToro, plenty of people in the queue. There are not a lot of opportunities. And so the miners, MicroStrategy, a few other crypto companies got all the equity excitement, and they trade at very, very expensive levels versus book because they trade as momentum stocks. Mm-hmm. And the CEOs of Riot and CleanSpark and Marathon are all smart guys. Hey, my stock's trading 3 times book, 4 times book. I'll sell it and I'll buy more book.
Yeah.
And so the single biggest dilution of all stocks haven't been in crypto stocks. And I'm like, oh, so the SEC thinks that this is really good for retail investors, but God forbid approving bullish. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah.
They approve Trump stock, which is literally a SPAC that owns a company with no revenue that has one real tweeter on it or whatever True Socialer on it and traded to some bizarre valuation where Trump, as the main owner, gets more and more ownership if the value stays higher. Like, I could not think of a worse recipe for a retail investor. But the SEC's like, let's approve that one.
Yeah.
And so it makes so little sense, right? The job, if the job is to protect the little guy. Now, in reality, the job of the SEC when you're going public is to make sure your disclosures cover the risk you're taking.
Yep.
And so I'm guessing they looked at the True Social. They said, well, it's all disclosed. I haven't read through the True Social prospectus, so I don't want to comment.
I'm going to get someone on that, though. That's funny. I hadn't even thought to do that.
But I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
And so in some ways,
Right, they're not supposed to be a merit-based regulator, as they say, right?
but in some ways, we were debating this in management today. How long will this meme stock world live on? And is it a permanent fixture now? Right? Like I've got a son-in-law, or soon-to-be son-in-law, a son and fiance, whatever you call that.
Yeah.
Late June.
Future son-in-law.
I'll have a son-in-law late June, who is awesome at meme stock, meme crypto.
Yeah.
I mean, he was early on dog with that. He just loves it, and there's a skill to it.
Yeah, there is.
It's a humor. It's being connected. It's knowing what's going to click, and I'm like, you picked this one, but you didn't pick that one, and that one worked.
Yeah. How do you know?
And there's something really freaking funny about Dog with Hat, or
It is funny.
or Pepe. The moment you saw Pepe, you love Pepe.
It's funny.
But like, it's speculation, right? Speculation is, how do you define speculation versus investment? We talked about it in our own podcast. I do it with duration.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to get rich quick, it's speculation.
If it's
you're
a
gonna
longer
if you're
term.
going to get rich slow, it's investment. But there's lots of ways. Is there fundamental value versus like you can make your own definition. It's always a spectrum, but meme stocks are definitely in the speculative side.
Yeah. Do you see?
But I think they're here for a while.
I mean, you saw Roaring Kitty posted an image of, I guess, of what, a guy sitting forward and paying attention? Was that the image? That's how I would describe it. You saw
Roaring Kitty, 3 years in the basement, shows up and creates a 3-day frenzy. GameStop was $17 billion market cap
He didn't even
yesterday.
mention it either. It's just a picture.
He's got a great grin.
Did you like that movie? Did you see that movie, Dumb Money?
I thought it was a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I thought it was really good too.
I thought they did a great job. I know Ken Griffin didn't like it. I know Stevie Cohen didn't like it. I don't think they minded their characters. They minded the look of the characters.
Yeah. It's so true. I thought Paul Dano was really good in that as Kitty.
I thought it was a great.
And I'll always remember that moment when he testified in Congress and they were like they're trying to get him to say that he was manipulating the stock with his posts, and he was like, "We like the stock. I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. We like the stock." And people are like, "How can that be?" Right? Because it's like GameStop stock. And he's like, "We just like it. We like it." And I was like, I love this answer. I don't know why.
He you gotta love Roaring Kitty, just because he beat the system, and
He really took it on.
and won. Listen, when you get bizarre valuation on things with lots of focus, so there are lots of liquidity, it is past the parcel. Someone is going to lose a fortune. I always feel terrible, and I said this during the fucking GameStop.
Yeah.
I was on CNBC, and I was like, I am very worried for people, not that bought it 3 weeks ago or 3 days ago. Those guys were bright and smart and realized the market was offsides on options, and they deserve to win. But sucking all the people in that are buying it at stupid prices, they will by definition lose.
Right.
And they did.
Yeah. A lot of people call this financial nihilism, that it's part of the meme stocks, even meme coins.
Well, listen, when we had rates at zero and the government by de facto was giving away money and saying money's really not worth that much, it gave birth to crypto. It gave birth to, why not memes?
It's almost pure. It's just
And so it was a nihilism.
Yeah.
It was the whole system's rigged against us. Listen, everybody should watch. Now I'm gonna footnote this in that my brother runs TED, the TED Talks, but Professor Galloway, Scott Galloway, Prof G, who I've been on his podcast twice, talking crypto, he gave a TED Talk on generational theft, and it was awesome. I have to say, and it pissed me off because it's shit that I've been saying nonstop, and you can find it. And he stole all my good ideas. They were his ideas too, but he put it together in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
And the punchline is, our youth are in so much worse shape that at 20 to 30 than my generation was at 20 to 30. And he looked at real income versus what it costs to go to college, what it costs to live in a house, and why this happened. And if you're young, you deserve to be pissed. You should be pissed at Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump and Joe Biden and all these frickin' geriatric baby boomers that have been running our country because they've done a shit job and they've stolen your money. $165 billion a year going into Social Security, where we couldn't even give $10 billion for the child earns tax credit. And so you watch that, and if you're young, you'll get pissed. And I think you saw that in meme stocks. You saw that on these campus protests. Even though it's about Israel-Palestine, there's something deeper. Young people have a restlessness, and they're mad at the system. And watch that podcast. It's a shout out to Scott Galloway.
Well, shout out to you, Mike. Thanks for coming back to Galaxy Brains. It's been a fascinating conversation. And, well, we'll have you back. Maybe we'll wait 5 or 6 more months. I mean, the end of the year, we're already almost halfway through this year. It's crazy.
We're 4.5 out of 12 months through the year. I got plenty of time.
All right. Thanks, Mike. That's it for this week's episode of Galaxy Brains. Thanks to our guest, Mike Novogratz, CEO, founder of Galaxy. And BIMNet will be back next week. Until then, everybody have a safe and happy weekend, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXY Research. See you next week.